Okay, hi everyone. It's Chris here checking in again. I had to give one of my bulls a shot. I had a little bit of foot rot, but I thought it was a good time to check in. And here in the background, there's a barn that my dad and grandpa built. But there's a second class of the Regenerative Leadership class set up through Holistic Management Canada. I wanted to run through. I just made some notes here. So this was a lot regarding the barriers to regenerative agriculture, and I know this is a very much of a passionate area for me, so this might be a little bit of a longer post, but I just wanted to run through some of the points that were discussed, as well as a very touching article that I'm going to have to read a couple quotes from. But there was a few points made about the barriers, about people not listening, and that often we don't want to ram information down their throats. And I know this is where I like this quote here that about change. Okay, if you don't take change by the hand, it'll take you by the throat. That's a Churchill quote. But often what prevents people from change is fear. And it was noted when people are in a state of fear, they go into that primitive part of our brain that's fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, so often people might fight your opinion, they might avoid you altogether or freeze up. But there's something I came across called the 50-30-20 rule in change management. Okay, 30% of people are resistors, 20% will advocate change, and 50% will go with whichever way the wind blows, as for the majority. So again, I think we have to remember that when change is involved, we're going to have to only target that 20%. So if we talk to 100 people, recognize only 20 of them are going to listen. So that's the first point. A point about change, one of the students talked about farming in general has gone through significant change since the industrial age. And that's obvious. You know, humans have been farming for thousands of years, but it's really within the only last 50 to 100, which is significant change. So it was talked about it's easy to convince those that may fail to be profitable, or as fail in a way of their health, personal health. And I know the note was made as soon as some farmers went through the pesticide safety courses and recognized the dangers to some of these pesticides, they were ones to maybe shift to a different perspective. Another point that I just wanted to reflect on, that upper government are often shoulder to shoulder with some people in big ag. And that's where we have to remember the authority that we talked about that drive policy may have different vested interests. Okay, and I know my point here that those people in power, right, they might be more in alignment with power, profit, and control. Okay, especially in those upper echelons, especially sometimes when we get into government, it seems like they're more in favor of the corporate structure versus farmers' goals that are more or less, individual farm profitability and maybe long-term health of the land and their community. And that's again sometimes goes against long-term profitability. A couple little points here. Generational change is challenging, especially when it goes against your family, friends, and neighbors. Okay. And I know a quote that came to mind is science. This is related to science. Okay, it was Max Planck that said science progresses one funeral at a time. Okay, and again, this can come to, just because my dad did it, I should do it. But I think sometimes we need to shake that off and say that's actually one of the most expensive sayings is that's the way we always did things. So another point about change that was made, we don't want to polarize people. Telling people they're wrong, right, that gets them into that fight-flight mechanism. Let's just talk through their context and work together to come up with a solution. I'm just running through a couple of my notes here. I know talking about getting information, and there was a point made that there was a study that's saying in 3 years people won't know what to believe. Okay, AI generated fake videos are becoming the norm to scam people, and I just made a point that that's where I believe the future is offline. Getting people boots on the ground, you can't fake that. Seeing is believing. I'm just running through. There was an article that I am going to read some quotes from that Dana passed on to us that I did feel was very powerful. During the class, I actually was running late. I was picking up meat from our butcher, so I wasn't able to complete the check-in, but afterwards I read the article and it was very powerful to me. Okay, it's by Liberty Hyde Bailey's Vision of Agriculture Extension. Okay, and I believe it was titled "Every Farmer Should Be Awakened," and I think this is going to be a necessary reading, and I'll have to read it through a few times. But just to give you the little preamble of what it was about, talking about agriculture extension work in the U.S. Yeah, right at the late 1800s to early 1900s. And I'm going to apologize for this, but I'm just looking at my notes because it was a very well written article. I'm going to just quote a few items. So if you want to skip to the end on my perspective, but I'm going to have a few quotes here. But the big parts of this about ag extensions was the best way to do it was to formulate sympathy with nature, a love of country life, and a scientific attitude expressed by a habit of careful observation and experimentation. That was kind of the overall conclusion to help educate in the realm of agriculture. Okay, and talks here, the main purpose of awakening farmers to this point of view was not to develop a more efficient, productive, and profitable agriculture, but to advance the larger cultural ideals of a self-sustaining agriculture and personal happiness. Now, wouldn't that be great if all our ag promotion was to promote self-sustaining agriculture and personal happiness? I'm going to run through some key points on this. It was a 10-page article, but I think it does need some breakdown. So this will be a couple minutes here, but I think there's some key quotes that I'm going to pull from this. One of my first ones here: newly awakened farmers would build a new day in the countryside that was not predominantly about the establishment of a more productive and profitable agriculture. Okay, that was a key thing that I kept coming back to, that I feel like we've gone the other way. And it talks about, self-sustaining agriculture brought into being by an intelligent class of self-dependent farmer experimenters who would gain the greater part of their happiness from their interactions with nature rather than the size of their bank accounts. Now, isn't that interesting? Okay, and now remember where this is coming from. This is in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And another quote here. The first 3 decades following the Civil War, there was many droughts and other natural calamities. The problem facing farmers during these times were low prices, increased competition, a deflated currency, a high level of indebtedness, monopoly control of transportation and distribution, soil exhaustion, and erosion due to poor farming practices. There was rural depopulation, and in the South, especially high rates of tenancy and sharecropping that slipped into peonage. And I had to define that for myself, that a peonage is a system by which debtors are bound in servitude to their creditors until their debts are paid. Now, that was in the early 1900s, and I feel that sounds very familiar with what some are dealing with today. Okay, now this is another little point here, talking about change in education. And I think this is a point to be made, again, referencing all this is written in the early 1900s. We have a whole new era of education, in my opinion. I'm just going to read another quote here. Throughout history, Bailey proclaimed education was the property of the few rather than the many. Okay? It was exclusive and selfish. It was considered to be adapted only to certain classes of people, to certain professions. Okay, so we're talking about education here. Now, keep going. It was thought to be of no use to all men. Scholars, therefore, were apart from others, from the world. They were a class. It was not strange that learning finally became scholasticism. I had to define that for myself, and again, a habit of sticking stubbornly to one specific method of teaching or learning. So we're talking about education here, and I know now, this fact that I'm talking to you through YouTube here, we have a whole new realm of education. I know I coined the thing, YouTube University. It is a real thing. We can talk to each other, and this is breaking free from some of the education that was back in those early 1900s, that it was truly was, you had to come to class. But this is breaking down the wall of this and actually taking a perspective that the best farm extensions were, again, boots on the ground. Again, I'm gonna give a couple good items here. I'm just reading through some really good notes. Bailey said, "We do things rather than talk about things. Teaching is approached through objective lessons, allowing and encouraging personal contact between student and teacher and student and student. Good teaching also requires engagement with the world beyond the campus." Now this comes back to a quote that I actually have written down in my office, and it is, "Without action, knowledge is often meaningless." So again, just learning something in the classroom, but to actually learn something on the land and then apply it with some action, that's really where knowledge is powerful. Okay, I know, again, another little point that this jumps into beyond agriculture, it's actually farmers' role in community, and that's tied into politics. And I just had to quote this part because I thought that's something that often we shy away from political discussions. Okay, so this quote here: "No part of our population is now giving more original thought to economic problems than the farmers," Bailey said. "And they need only definite instructions in the principles of the science to make them what they must eventually become, the most powerful and conservative element of our body politic." Okay, it goes on to say, "All prosperity results ultimately upon the land, and no higher institutions of learning can serve the best interests of philanthropy and patriotism until it plants itself firmly in the soil which gave it." So again, I just note that a good human being, I think the salt of the earth kind of people, that's what we want in our politics, not the infighting and quarreling that often occurs. Again, this made me think of another quote. You can tell that I do enjoy quotes. This is about, related to that, policy drives biology, in my opinion, and politics are very important, especially when it talks about agriculture. And this is a quote from, just a portion of a quote from Bertolt Brecht. Okay, I might have got that wrong, but this is just talking, this is as quote here, portion: "The worst illiterate is the political illiterate. He doesn't hear, he doesn't speak, nor participate in the political events. He doesn't know the cost of life, the price of the bean, of the fish, or of the flower." Okay, so again, not knowing what the cost of things, and I know we're in a world now where the cost of living is going up, and in my opinion, health is going down. Politics is really where we need to start talking, and especially I think in the agriculture field. I'm gonna keep going here. A couple really good nuggets. I know it's getting a little bit dark, but I think you can still hear me okay. You might be able to hear my bulls here chewing in the background. Again, they found some nice green grass here close to the chute. But another quote here: "Bailey's view was the focus and promise of agriculture education in terms that included making farmers better citizens as well as better farmers." Okay, and I'm just making note, again, this is set up through Holistic Management Canada. People are a leg on this stool, right? Besides the finance as well as the land, people are a huge part of the stool, and I think creating farmers to be better citizens is very key. Another little quote here: "According to Bailey, the larger movement must have a closer vital connection with the people, supplemented by bulletins and correspondence, reading courses. Face-to-face teaching was to be in the central means of establishing a closer and more vital connection." So again, we're just talking about getting people to people and learning from farmer to farmer as well as teacher to farmer. Another little note: "Teaching by observation not only awakens the farmer himself, but it also interests all other citizens in his work." I know there was someone mentioned they teach in a way that builds confidence as well as competence. And again, that's where, even back to the 4-H, 4-H, learn to do by doing. This is another key part that hit close to home with me, and it's actually about teaching not only farmer to farmer, but are teaching our children about agriculture. And this kind of hits close to home to me because my mother-in-law was actually very involved with ag in the classroom. Okay, she was very much part of getting agriculture to the classroom and teaching, and I think I'm reading another quote here that hits close to home. Even in the early 1900s, it was obvious. So this is again a quote from this article. I think that the fundamental method in improving the agriculture status is to begin with genuine and attractive nature education in rural schools. As soon as a genuine interest in these matters is awakened in the child and the teacher, school gardens and we really see some change. He goes on to say, Bailey viewed it was both that it taught a love of the country life and a sympathy with nature and encouraged a habit of careful observation and investigation. Now, this reminds me of a powerful quote that getting kids to acknowledge agriculture and acknowledge the land. But it's a quote here that I've come across. I don't know who put it together, but we only protect the things we love, and we only love the things we experience. So again, to experience nature is key. And this was coming down to the last of the points that I made here. This was a serious role of reading books and passing that all knowledge to others. There was a point here made. Bailey's original idea about readers, they were encouraged to organize into clubs. During 1899, 3 farmers were hired to organize reading clubs in their respective counties. By 1901, the college reported nearly 60 organized reading clubs across the state. And he goes on to these reading clubs really advanced the passing on of knowledge. Okay. And he says by later on there was 15,000 farmers enrolled in the farmers reading course. Okay, and I think I kind of made a point here down. We're in a world now of digital tech connection, and I know I listen to a lot of podcasts and do listen to a lot of audiobooks while going round and round in the tractor, and I think this would be a great point to take home for me, to maybe initiate some reading clubs, pass on this knowledge, and even the fact that I'm talking to you right now, this is the point of passing things on. So again, that's kind of goes through that article. To me, it was very powerful. I'm just looking at my couple final notes here, but I know this got very long-winded, and but this is a very big topic for me: barriers and helping teach and get the point across. And I think we can get people to have an aha moment when they understand the connection that they have to the land and future generations. So I know I probably could keep talking on this subject, but I know the big point here, a little note here, that we want to light the fire in people's bellies. Okay, so and that's where pulling people not just from the mind and education, but from the heart, and sparking the passion, create better stewards of the land, stewards of our communities, and yeah. But yeah, that's all I kind of have to say. I know the sun kind of went down on me here, but I appreciate the long-winded. If you made it to the end, I really do appreciate it. It was a very powerful discussion, and I appreciate this course that we're able to share our opinions and ideas. So take care, and we'll check in with you maybe next few days or next week. Take care.